When the topic of girl groups from the 60s comes up, most people immediately think of names like the Ronettes, the Crystals, or the Shangri-Las. But the 60s also saw the appearance of many all-girl groups who not only sang, but also played their instruments. At a time when the male-dominated music world was unaccustomed to women playing instruments, many dismissed all-girl groups as a gimmick or a visual novelty, and they struggled to be taken seriously as musicians. Even though many of them have been largely forgotten over the years, these bands played a pioneering role, and they paved the way for countless female musicians who followed. In this video, we're going to take a look at 10 tracks from all-girl rock bands from the 60s. Let's begin.
The band we have tonight has only been in the area since the Seattle Teen Spectacular, but they're so big that they're just about the hottest thing around right now. The Pleasure Seekers.
The Pleasure Seekers were formed in Detroit in 1964, and they are best remembered for featuring Suzi Quatro, who led the band with her sisters Patty and Arlene before embarking on a solo career with hits like 48 Crash and Can the Can. Several of her singles reached the top 10 in Britain and across Europe and Australia, but she never enjoyed the same level of success in her native United States, where many people primarily remember her for her role as Leather Tuscadero on the 70s sitcom Happy Days. The Pleasure Seekers were firmly embedded in the Detroit music scene, and they regularly shared stages with leading Detroit bands from that period such as the MC5, the Stooges, and the Amboy Dukes, and they were well respected among the musicians who were part of the scene. The group was soon signed to Hideout Records, and this track called What a Way to Die is the highlight of their recording career. This is one of many 60s songs that seem to anticipate the sort of punk rock attitude and sound that would emerge more prominently later in the late 70s. The group toured extensively across the United States, sharing stages with bands such as the Yardbirds and the Velvet Underground, and many other groups of the era. And their growing reputation as a powerful live band prompted Mercury Records to offer them a recording deal in 1968, making them one of the first all-girl groups to be signed to a major label. In 1969, eldest sister Arlene left the Pleasure Seekers to start a family, and one of her children is actress Sherilyn Fenn, best known for her role in the cult TV series Twin Peaks. The Pleasure Seekers were joined by another Quatro sister, Nancy Quatro. But as musical tastes began to shift in the late 60s, the band adopted a heavier sound, and they changed their name to Cradle in 1970. Cradle soon disbanded due to lack of success, however, and Suzi Quatro moved to Britain and found major success as a solo performer. The Liverbirds were formed in Liverpool in 1963 at the very height of the city's musical explosion and the earliest days of Beatlemania. This was a time when clubs like the Cavern were thriving and Merseybeat groups were beginning to dominate the British charts. But despite sharing the same hometown, the Beatles, and John Lennon in particular, were not especially supportive of the group. In an interview a few years ago, the Liverbirds bassist Mary McGlory recalled,
"On this one day, the compere Barbola said, 'Would you like to come and meet the Beatles?' So he took us into the dressing room. We had our guitars with us. It was just John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And he said, 'This is the Liverbirds. They are going to be Liverpool's first all-female rock and roll band.' And John Lennon just looked at us and he said, 'Girls don't play guitars.' And we thought, oh God, we're going to show you. Then we practice and practice and practice and practice.
Just like many of their Merseybeat contemporaries, the Liverbirds soon relocated to Hamburg, where they achieved major success. And they got signed to the Star Club label, for whom they released 4 singles between late 1964 and 1966. Even though it was released as a B-side, Why Do You Hang Around Me became one of their most popular songs, and its release coincided with a period of great success for the group.
That one that Pam wrote, Why Do You Hang Around Me? That was very popular and famous. We were playing with a group called the Kinks. We did a few days tour with the Rolling Stones. We stayed in Hamburg and became very well known all over Europe. The people and the crowds were getting bigger. We did really massive tours all over Europe.
Switzerland, Norway, Denmark,
Vienna,
Holland, Sweden, all over Germany.
By 1967, however, as the music scene rapidly changed and evolved, their success began to dwindle. But the Liverbirds continued touring extensively across Europe, and they shared stages with major artists of the era such as Jimi Hendrix.
We played at the Starkville with Jimi Hendrix, and Jimi Hendrix was sitting there and he said, Are you the Liverbirds? We said, yes. He said, Which one's Mary? That's me. He said, I've been waiting for you. I said, Well, full, because I've been told that you make the best joints in Hamburg.
After a few lineup changes, the group took part in a highly successful tour of Japan, but they broke up shortly afterwards in 1968.
Thank you very much. Up, down, can't make up your mind which guy.
The Loved Ones were formed in Niles, Detroit, and they were one of the most uncompromising all-girl rock bands of the mid-60s. The driving force behind the group was Char Vinage, who served as lead vocalist, lead guitarist, principal songwriter, road manager, and even handled artwork and logistics. Up Down Sue captures the band at their most ferocious, combining raw energy with Char Vinage's razor-sharp fuzz guitar and a commanding vocal delivery.
What makes you think you can take a hide? And just for pride, tear it apart.
Shortly after the release of Up Down Sue, which was their debut single, the Loved Ones got signed to Dunwich Records, and they toured extensively across the United States, moving from one-night engagements to the next. In a male-dominated music scene unaccustomed to an all-female rock band, they often faced raised eyebrows and skepticism, and they spent much of their career working to demonstrate their abilities to label executives, club owners, and audiences alike. But even their record label, the normally astute Dunwich Records, seemed so focused on the success of The Shadows of Night that the Loved Ones were largely overlooked. By the late 60s, after years of relentless touring, the group returned to Michigan and disbanded, having made their point. Char Vinage, however, continued to push forward artistically. Vinage was completely captivated by Jimi Hendrix's groundbreaking guitar work, and she retreated to her basement studio with her beloved Gibson SG to study his playing in obsessive detail. Her dedication soon paid off when Billy Cox, bassist for Hendrix's band of Gypsies, somehow heard of Char, tracked her down, and together they recorded the explosive Nitro Function album, with Char Vinage taking center stage.
You may think I reached too far to sing a song and play guitar.
The Loved Ones only released 4 singles during their brief recording career. In 1997, Sundazed Records signed the group to reissue their singles and previously unreleased demos. But unfortunately, shortly after the deal was finalized, Char Vinage passed away from a heart attack. The Loved Ones have since gained new fans through these reissues, and they are widely regarded as one of the most talented all-girl bands of the 60s.
Baby, baby, you're on my mind. The folks are going and a place will be mine.
The Clingers were an American girl band made up of 4 sisters, Patsy, Deborah, Melody, and Peggy Klinger. They were raised in a Mormon family in Utah and started out as a barbershop quartet called the Klinger Sisters. But in 1965, inspired by the growing success of contemporary rock groups, they decided to move away from a cappella singing and they reinvented themselves as a self-contained rock band. So they shortened their name to the Klingers and they learnt to play their instruments. After years of appearing on variety shows performing mostly middle-of-the-road material, the Klingers straightened their hair, donned hip mod outfits, and reinvented themselves as a rock band. After spending time learning to play their instruments, the band began touring extensively in 1966 with bands like the Yardbirds and the Jefferson Airplane and many others, entering a countercultural world of hippies, freaks, creatives and druggies that stood in stark contrast to their conservative Mormon upbringing. The newly rechristened Clingers got signed to Columbia Records in 1968 and released this excellent single in January 1969. The song was originally written and recorded by Australian band The Easy Beats, and the Clingers delivered a harder rocking version that sounds strikingly close to the kind of material that all-girl bands like the Runaways would release later in the 70s. And not surprisingly, the single was co-produced by future Runaways manager Kim Fowley, who was also involved in promoting the Clingers and shaping their image, famously describing them as church girls with guitars daring to play the devil's music. The single was well received by the press and earned generally strong reviews, and the Clingers promoted the track on major television shows such as the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. But despite the television exposure and Kim Fowley's unrelenting promotion, the single failed to chart. The Clingers went on to release 2 more singles in 1969 and 1970 for the Forward label and MGM, and they eventually disbanded in 1971. After the split, lead singer Peggy Klinger formed a successful songwriting partnership with husband Johnny Symbol, writing songs for the Partridge Family, David Cassidy and Donny Osmond. But unfortunately, Peggy Klinger tragically died of a drug overdose in 1975 at the age of 26. In 2025, the Sundays label issued a comprehensive compilation collecting all of the band's recorded material.
Church girls with guitars daring to play the devil's music.
Oh my God.
Our buddy Kim Fowley. Sounds just like he
Sounds just like him.
Chico wears a jacket that says rebels on the back. His neighborhood's a jungle, so he travels with a pack.
Chico's Girl is a 1966 single by The Girls, an American all-female rock band from Los Angeles, composed of sisters Rosemary, Diane, Sylvia and Margaret Sandoval, who was the drummer and lead singer of the band. Chico's Girl was one of the 2 singles that the band released for Capitol. The song was written by famed Brill-building songwriters Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, who originally penned it for the Crystals. But the Crystals version was ultimately rejected and never released, so Capitol Records handed the song to The Girls, who gave it a tougher and more guitar-driven treatment. From a lyrical point of view, the song's story of devotion to a misunderstood rebel echoes the dramatic themes popularized by mid-60s girl groups like the Shangri-Las.
When folks say he's bad, like they always do, I get so mad, 'cause I know it really ain't true. And I should know, 'cause I'm Chico's girl.
And that's what makes Chico's Girl so compelling. It's a truly unique mix of that classic girl group drama with the sort of fuzz-drenched sounds that came to define many American garage rock bands of the era. Even though the single wasn't a commercial hit at the time, Chico's Girl later became a cult favorite among collectors and 60s enthusiasts. And the song is a standout and unique example of an all-girl band putting a gritty garage rock edge on Brill-building pop. Climb That Tree was the B-side of the final single by the Trinity, which was recorded in 1969 and eventually issued in January 1970. And it's a truly unusual track that has become a cult favorite among enthusiasts of heavy psychedelia and early progressive rock. The Trinity were a Canadian-British all-girl band discovered by producer Mickey Most in 1965 and signed to Columbia Records. Their debut single was released in 1966, a gender-flipped cover of I Fought the Law.
He's breaking rocks in the hot sun. He fought the law and the law won. He fought the law and the law
The single didn't chart but received strong airplay on pirate radio, which helped the band gain some attention. The group went through several lineup changes, with bassist Pauline Moran remaining the only constant member from 1965 until the band's breakup in 1970. In 1967, they briefly featured renowned jazz musician Barbara Thompson, who joined shortly after marrying Coliseum drummer John Heisman. But Thompson soon left the group after refusing to wear a bikini costume requested by the BBC for a television appearance on The Kathy Kirby Show. Frustrated by being treated as a novelty act rather than taken seriously as a musician, she decided to leave the band, telling the press at the time that she was a musician, not a stripper. By the late 60s, musical tastes were shifting fast, and after several overlooked singles in 1966 and 1967, the Trinity returned with their final release in early 1970. The A-side was a cover of Hair from the well-known musical production, but the real highlight was the B-side. The single itself went nowhere, but the B-side was later rediscovered on compilations of obscure British psychedelia, which helped the song become a cult classic. The Trinity broke up in 1970 shortly after the release of the single. After the split, bassist Pauline Moran became a famous actress in her own right, culminating with her role as Miss Lemon in Agatha Christie's Poirot, a British TV series which lasted from 1989 to 2013. The Debutantes were formed in Detroit in 1964 and led by 14-year-old Jan McClellan, who decided to form the group after watching the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show. Initially, the band played acoustic guitars, but by 1965, they switched to electric instruments and began playing locally, performing sets mostly made up of current rock hits such as The Last Time by the Rolling Stones. After an unsuccessful single for Standout Records in 1966, the group got signed to the Lucky 11 label and released this single in March 1967. The A-side was a cover of Love is Strange, but the highlight was the B-side, a track called A New Love Today, which was written by Jan McClellan herself. The track blended folk rock and garage rock elements, and was driven by a bright, jangly guitar which gave it extra texture and punch. In 1968, the band was contracted to perform in Germany for US troops, and they also played in venues like the Star Club in Hamburg, home of their beloved Beatles. But the low point of their career came in 1969 during a tour of Southeast Asia. In an interview several years later, Jan McClellan recalled,
"Girl bands toured Southeast Asia because the troops loved seeing round eyes. That's racist, of course, but what can you tell guys in their teens and 20s? It was dangerous there, and there were a couple of casualties that the powers that be tried to keep hush-hush. I remember an Australian group playing at an officers' club. The lead singer stepped to the mic to say goodnight, and she was shot and killed. She was right in the line of fire of an assassin who was aiming at a high-ranking officer. We really got taken advantage of by the Korean booking agent. He took our passports and would not return them until he felt we had played enough dates to make it worthwhile for him to have paid our plane fares from Honolulu to Saigon. I wrote to the American consulate and then President Nixon, but no one would acknowledge our pleas to come home. While we were there, all of our American musical equipment was stolen, and we felt it was an inside job by the agent for the black market. He then lent us a bunch of garbage equipment to finish the gig."
Even though A New Love Today wasn't a hit at the time, it later gained recognition and cult status after appearing on compilations like Girls with Guitars, and the Debutantes' music was rediscovered once again in 2018 when Sundazed Records released a comprehensive compilation featuring all their recorded material, along with several previously unreleased tracks. The appearance of all-girl groups in the 60s wasn't exclusively an American or European phenomenon, it happened worldwide, and Dara Puspita are one of the most striking examples. But out of all the girl bands from the 60s, none faced more adversities than them. The group was formed in Indonesia in 1964, and the band faced pressure from the Sukarno regime, which viewed rock music as an unwanted Western influence, going so far as to imprison Indonesia's most popular band, a group called Koes Bersaudara, simply for playing rock and roll. Dara Puspita's sound and stage act were heavily influenced by British bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, whose music was officially banned in Indonesia. And their short skirts, synchronized dance moves, and unapologetic volume clashed sharply with conservative expectations of female restraint. All of this led to the authorities arresting the group in 1965 for performing outlawed music. They were accused of being too Western and too provocative, and they were instructed not to move their bodies on stage. Even though they avoided prison, the pressure and restrictions forced the band into self-imposed exile in Thailand. After the fall of the Sukarno government in late 1965, Dara Puspita's first LP was finally released in 1966, followed by 3 more albums between 1966 and 1968. The song featured in this video dates from 1967, and it stands as one of the many highlights of their career. Driven by fuzz guitar and crisp production, it captures many of the hallmarks of mid-60s garage rock. In 1968, the band took the almost unheard-of step for an Indonesian group of trying their luck in Europe, touring extensively across England, Holland, France, Belgium, Spain, Germany, and Hungary. And while in England, they recorded 2 singles for CBS and recorded another for Philips in the Netherlands. The group gained a reputation as a sensational live act, bashing away on their instruments and screaming out their songs and jumping up and down on stage. After 3 years touring Europe, the group returned to Indonesia in 1971, where demand for their music was high, and shows performed throughout Indonesia between 1971 and their disbanding on 1972 were all sold out, with as many as 23,000 spectators attending their shows. Thanks to album reissues and online rediscovery, Dara Puspita has since earned a reputation among 60s aficionados as one of the very best all-girl garage groups of the era. The Feminine Complex were an all-female rock band from Nashville, Tennessee, formed while its members were still in high school. The group taught themselves to play their instruments and quickly built a local following, performing in teen clubs and small venues. In 1968, they signed to Athena Records and recorded this excellent album called Live in Love. All the tracks were original compositions, mostly written by Mindy Dalton, and the album blended garage rock sounds with hints of psychedelic experimentation.
When I look in your eyes, you know I'm anticipating.
It's Magic stands out as one of the album's best and most psychedelic tracks, featuring fuzz guitars, wah-wah effects, and swirling ethereal vocals that create a dreamy and slightly trippy vibe. The album spawned 2 singles, which didn't chart nationally but became local top 40 hits in Nashville.
I've been working on you, baby, baby. I'm trying to try, baby, baby. I won't run, I won't run, I won't run.
The album was issued in 1969, and the group broke up when school began in the fall of that year. Over time, original pressings of Live in Love have become rare collector's items, fetching astronomical prices. And the demand for the album led to a couple of reissues, first by Teen Beat in 1996, and later by Revola Records in 2004.
Don't waste my time. You went and said goodbye to me, and I don't want you anymore.
By the mid-60s, nearly every city seemed to have its own standout all-girl band, and Chicago was no exception. The Daughters of Eve were formed in 1965 and managed by Carl Bonafide, best known as the producer behind the Buckinghams. The band's name was coined by drummer Debbie Pomeroy with help from her father, a hip Lutheran minister who also managed one of the wildest and fiercest garage bands of the 60s, the Dirty Words, a group that featured Debbie's brother, Justin Pomeroy.
I need to love it! I need you very much!
The Daughters of Eve toured heavily throughout the Midwest and shared bills with artists such as Rufus Thomas, Neil Diamond, and Chicago favorites like The Shadows of Night. The group recorded some of their strongest material in 1967, including an excellent reverb-soaked cover of Help Me Girl by The Animals, which was retitled Help Me Boy.
Help me boy, 'cause I'm gone insane, yeah.
But to my ears, the highlight of their career was the B-side of their debut single, Don't Waste My Time. The B-side, with its throbbing bass, sharp guitars, and cool but defiant harmonies, have often been compared to the sort of material that groups like Blondie recorded later in the 70s. In 1968, the band released their fourth and last single and scored a local hit with the horn-powered Social Tragedy. But despite the local success of the song, the Daughters of Eve disbanded later that year. The essential and wild 1966 pounder I'm Gonna Destroy That Boy was released by the What For, an American all-girl group that enjoyed a brief burst of local popularity with this tune. This was the A-side of their second single, released by Columbia Records and produced by jazz legend Teo Macero, better known for his work with Miles Davis and Dave Brubeck. This could hardly be further from his jazz productions, but the song has become a cult favorite thanks to its raw garage sound and edgy attitude, which set it apart from most female-fronted singles of the era. Like many tracks featured in this video, its cult status has made original pressings highly sought after by collectors. But fortunately, it has appeared on plenty of compilations over the years, so there's no need to shell out $500 just to hear it. Other than that, not much is known about the What For, so whenever you have a couple of minutes to spare, give the song a listen. It's well worth checking out, and you wouldn't risk getting destroyed by the What For, would you? I know I said this video would feature 10 tracks, but it just wouldn't feel complete without this song by the Models. So consider this a bonus track, a little gift for those of you who made it all the way to the end of the video.
You're all the man I need, and baby you know it.
The reason I'm including this song as a sort of bonus track is because unlike all the groups featured on this video, the Models were not really an all-girl band. They were a duo fronted by Susan Shell and Janice Pennington, who, true to their name, worked as fashion models in New York. The single was produced by Tom Wilson, well known for his work with Bob Dylan, the Velvet Underground, and the Mothers of Invention. And Wilson's production is one of the highlights of the track. The intro of the song already signals that we're in for some freak-out psychedelic journey. The song is drenched in swirling psychedelic sounds and studio effects. And to my ears, this is the definitive version of Bend Me, Shape Me. Bend Me, Shape Me became a major hit when it was covered by the American Breed in October 1967. But this version by the Models was actually the first recorded version of the song. It was released 4 months before the more famous hit by the American Breed. The song was written by the prolific songwriting team of Scott English and Larry Weiss, who were also behind hits like Hi-Ho Silver Lining by Jeff Beck, Help Me Girl by The Animals, and Popcorn Double Feature by The Searchers. The original version of Bend Me, Shape Me by the Models was a flop, and by the time the song became a hit for the American Breed 6 months later, the Models version had largely been forgotten. But their rendition remains a striking, forward-thinking interpretation and a glamorous and strange footnote in 60s pop history.
And now, here's a groovy song by these 4 girls from Detroit. It's the Pleasure Seekers with What a Way to Die. Oh, yes!
I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments which of these bands or songs was your favorite, or feel free to mention your own favorite all-girl bands from the 60s. See you next time.